On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are joined by favorite friend of the show, Evan Lazar. But first, our guys.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. We are tonight powered by our friends at BetUS and going to talk about all the goodness from William Mattar Law Offices. But Aaron, how are you doing?
I love Pat's Week now. I hated it for about 17 years. It was my least favorite week of the year. Many of you know I grew up in New England. I was in the pits of New England up in Maine during the biggest years of the dynasty of the Patriots, and it was terrible. All my friends would just pile on me all week long, and I would hear from them. And I gotta say, I don't know if I'm just getting old and losing friends, but it was super quiet.
Is your phone real quiet now?
My phone is very quiet. My DMs are super quiet, and not a lot of responses to my memes and things that I've sent. But I got a special shirt for my friends that I'm rocking here tonight for the show. I just want to show you guys here for those just listening. This is from the perfect game that Josh Allen displayed on my birthday a few years ago in the wild card, and just showing the drives that where the Bills didn't punt. I'm sorry, Evan's sitting there out here in the guest room just looking at us gloat and talk about this, and I feel bad for him. But you know what, Evan? It's New England fans' fault for the 17 years of torment that I had to suffer through. Yeah. So this is my 15 minutes of fame. I'm sorry.
There's no sense waiting. We've had him on for many years up to this point. Now, host of the Patriots Catch-22 at Patriots.com, our man, Evan Lazar. Evan, how are we doing?
I'm doing well. I love how Aaron goes there with me on mute, right? Like I can't even
can't rebuttal.
He's just letting me just take it on the chin. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, are you guys ever going to win a Super Bowl, or is that just
on.
Something that you talk about a lot? Talk a lot of smack for division banners. I'm just saying.
Right. Hey, I'm still hanging. I will say, you're right. You are correct. I'd have no rings for you to kiss, and you have a lot of rings for me to kiss. But I say this all the time. I am still celebrating those division banners until we get a Super Bowl, because it was so long, Evan. You saw us from, you from covering this division of just being one of, obviously none of us are the Jets. We can all sit here and just laugh at the Jets, right? But I'll take the small successes on the way to hopefully the bigger success.
That's totally fair. And as now that we're in this world with the Patriots, I miss the division titles. I do. I miss those little moments that we probably took for granted towards the end there of the run. But now you realize, like, it wasn't that easy to rattle off. I think it was like 8 or 9 in a row at one point, and
it was almost 18 and 19 at one point or something. Like, it was like 2 8 or 9.
Yeah, so they didn't win in 2002. Brady's second year as the starter, they missed the playoffs, actually, which people forget. And then they went and they won 2 straight Super Bowls after that. Wow. And then they didn't win it the Matt Castle year, 2008. Yeah. And so from 2009 to 18, they went right through. Yeah,
just blowing us out. Yeah.
So let's now bring you out of those glory years back into now the reality of today. Talk a little bit about, we're going to get into the breakdown on each side of the ball a little bit. We're obviously going to preview this game, but I think there's not as much mystery in the game. Anything can happen. Division games can get weird, of course, that we can see where those things go, but I don't think anyone's expecting anything dramatic in this game individually. It's more so,
I bet there's some people in the comment section that are nervous Mafia still.
RJ has everybody covered. It'll be fine.
Okay.
I'm more interested in, as I was going through prepping for the offense, like, okay, which of these pieces are pieces that we need to like be worried about in the future? What's developing? Where are our Pats fans looking at like keepers on the way that it's currently structured? And is that really what this season has kind of developed into, is trying to identify what are the parts worth hanging on to? I think Aaron and I each have like one shining star on each side of the ball. They're like, hey, like Maye seems legit, Gonzalez is a stud, and then a whole bunch of like, maybe we'll see. Is that kind of what it's turned into?
Absolutely. I feel like those two guys, we get as much run out of publishing Maye and Gonzalez pieces that we possibly can on the website, because unfortunately there's not a whole lot of other star power on this team right now, and even the star power that exists, it's not translating yet to win. So it's difficult times right now. But I think the biggest thing that you see offensively is that outside of Drake Maye, it is hard to come up with positives or things that are building blocks for the future. There are two rookie receivers that they drafted, Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, have essentially done nothing. They have 12 combined catches between the two of those guys right now. Their rookie offensive lineman, Caden Wallace, has been on injured reserve for most of the season, and Layden Robinson starting now at left guard, but he's riding the roller coaster in his first season. So they didn't get much out of their draft class besides Drake. Now that's like a big besides, right? You get the quarterback is a pretty big deal. But right now it's really those two guys. And offensively, if I had to say keepers, like Mike Onwenu's a really solid guard. He's a NFL caliber, above average, I would say, starting guard in the NFL. Hunter Henry's had a really nice season. He has a career high in receptions already. He's fourth in the league, I believe, still in receiving yards from tight ends. So he's having a decent season, and I still believe in Ramondre Stevenson as a workhorse type running back. But they still lack a lot of talent on the offensive line, a lot of talent in the receiver room.
So in that kind of vein of talent and development, so I was high on Polk and Baker, right? Like I actually think there was a pretty nice draft class that you guys had, and you're not the Jets, right? Like you're looking at that quarterback position, there's a future there, and that's good to see. I think Bills fans should be concerned years down the road here if they can build those trenches up around you. But what is the vibe on this coaching staff, and do people feel like this is the right staff in place to develop these guys and build that future around Drake Maye?
That's definitely the question that we're asking right now. And look, I'll be frank with you guys. The Boston Sports Radio is not doing very well right now in terms of their thoughts on Jerod Mayo. The town is up in flames over a lot of different pieces to the Mayo puzzle. I think the one thing that is really just taking people aback is he is so different at press conferences than Bill Belichick. Like you could not picture polar opposite people than Jerod Mayo and Bill Belichick. So the bluntness at press conferences that Mayo speaks with is really sending everybody into a tailspin. People think he's throwing people under the bus. People think he's deflecting blame. People think that he's, outwardly contradicting himself, like just things like of that nature. And as you guys know, I'm an X's and O's guy. Like I don't really care about what he says at press conferences all that much. It's my job to cover them, but it's not really something that I think about a whole lot. So to me, the biggest thing to me is, can he show us something in these last 3 weeks from a schematic perspective where I say that was a great game plan, or that was, innovative or creative on the defensive side of the ball in particular, just because that's his area expertise. So I'm fascinated to watch these last 2 games against Buffalo. I don't know if the Bills are going to play everybody in week 18, but at least on Sunday, this is his first time going up against Josh Allen as the head coach of the Patriots. Josh Allen's probably the MVP of the league right now. So what do you got? What is in your bag right now? Because you're going to have to face this giant for a long, long time in the division. So we'll see if they can come up with anything to stop Allen on Sunday.
So as we look at the actual offensive side of the ball here, and you already touched on a big piece that I wanted to go through, let's jump right in and go right into Maye. I am really disappointed with how promising he looks. It's really a shame. I was really hoping this would be a horrendous whiff and that he would just be a disaster. I was actually joking with, it might have been on one of Mark Schofield's threads. It was somebody that was talking through, and some people were bringing up that there was, like, obviously some elements of, Josh Allen to the game. And like, he's like 95% as tall, like 90% as heavy, like 85% as fast, and like has like 85% of the arm, but he's got 100% of the watch this stuff. Like he has that flair to his game where just in the last game where he was running off to the sideline, but oh wait, there's somebody, like a backhand flip touchdown to Douglas, and he has a lot of fun to his game. Obviously there were a lot of variability in Josh Allen's rookie season, but there were the flashes that were enough to hold on to. I know as I've gone through and started to like watch more full games, kind of prepping for this week, but a lot of this season it had been obviously like highlights and flashes and like split, multiple screen viewing. I hadn't done a ton of like isolated watching of the Patriots just with a weird schedule. It was hard for me to figure out, okay, how much of this is, objectively poor blocking and some receivers not giving him a ton to work with, not a ridiculous amount of drop issues, but not, consistent creation separation, like giving him nice open targets. How has the evaluation of Maye been trying to isolate those other things where, there is, I would say, not concerning, a large amount of sacks that's hard for me from afar to prep. Like, okay, I do lean into sometimes the, hey, sacks are a quarterback stat as much as they're an offensive line stat, but, some of it is just bad offensive line play here. With that as an example, some of the other pieces, how has the evaluation of Maye gone when there's clear flashes and then some things that aren't going great? How easy is it to figure out if that's a him thing or a surroundings thing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's hard a lot of the time to decipher that. And I find myself like, am I being too critical of him? He's a rookie. He's made 8 starts. Like, am I getting ahead of myself? Because some of the things that you see in terms of what's on him with the sacks is drifting a little bit too far back in pockets or causing his own pressure in different ways and things like that. That once or twice a game, you'll see that happen where, he might get to like 11 or 12 yards deep in the pocket instead of 10, right? Like something like that along those lines. But that's a young quarterback thing that over time and hopefully with better protection, he'll learn and he'll get that out of his system. And just to put it up, statistically, the Patriots right now are 32nd in the league in pass blocking win rate and 32nd in the league in run blocking win rate. So they are the worst offensive line in the NFL by everybody's metrics, like win rate, PFF grade, go right on down the line.
The PFF grades are not favorable. Like,
no.
We tease them a lot, but like it's when it's that far of an extreme, it's hard not to assume it's directionally accurate.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has them as the worst offensive line in football. And so when you put that with the fact that they really don't have an alpha in the receiver room either, they have some guys that are capable. Pop Douglas is capable. Kendrick Bourne is capable. But they still don't have a Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, number one receiver. So there's a lot on Maye to just make stuff happen, like just make plays. I think the best microcosm of that was the touchdown at the end of the game against Tennessee that sent the game into overtime, where he dropped back to pass. There was nobody open. He ran around for 12 seconds on the play and like flung it, getting hit by 3 guys to Ramondre Stevenson in the corner of the end zone. And Stevenson made a great, contested play on the ball to box a guy out and make the catch. But that to me was just a perfect microcosm of Drake, just figure it out. Right? Like, we got nothing else except you, so just make something happen. I think there's so many elements of that in this offense. Now, to just go back to him, individually for a sec. I think what's impressed me the most about him is how well he's played from the pocket this early on in his career. I did not expect that. All the other stuff that you were talking about, the flip to Douglas on Sunday, that he made an out of structure throw against Miami in garbage time, where he found Austin Hooper wide open down the field really late in the down. That was Allen-esque, but like those stuff I kind of expected him to do based off of what he did at North Carolina. What's been really impressive is he's 10th in the league right now in CPOE. Right? Like his accuracy has been really, really solid, which if you read all the scouting reports, it was that he was going to spray passes all over the place and he was going to have issues controlling the football with his mechanics early on in his career. That has not really been a problem. It happens like once a game. Last week he airmailed one to Kayshon Boutte, but it's one time out of 30 throws, right? Like you're really not talking about it being nearly as catastrophic as what some people might have thought. And he's a really good processor. He's not really reading the coverages fully yet, but he's reading progressions. 1, 2, 3, is this guy open or is he not? And you see that every single week that he goes 1, 2, 3, all the way to the check down pretty consistently when he has the time, and he's needed to do that. So that's really been impressive. And then obviously the scrambling ability has been exceptional too. So I think the one thing, watching the Bills tape this week on offense that I'm envious of with Buffalo is Joe Brady and the way that he's designed this Bills offense around Josh Allen's mobility. Watching them, that long trap play, bash, all this other stuff that they've been doing with Allen. The Patriots just don't do nearly enough of that with Drake. It's just not.
It's a really low play action. Like I would think you'd have a ton of under center play action bootleg. Like give him the options there. I was surprised how little that I saw that.
Yeah, a lot of that, I guess you could probably chalk up to the line not being able to pass protect it. I think that's a fair way to explain that away if you're Alex Van Pelt, the Patriots offensive coordinator. But the bigger thing to me too is just the lack of RPO, the lack of read option design, especially in goal line, short yardage, those types of situations. Last week they got down to the Arizona 4-yard line on a really nice drive, and they went for it on 3rd and 4th and 1, and they just put him under center and had him turn around and hand the ball off to Ramondre Stevenson, and he got stuffed on 4th down. And everybody was kind of up in arms on that call, but it is a head scratcher. I mean, first of all, like you guys sneak Allen all the time because he's 6'6" and 240 pounds and he can take it. Like Drake's a big kid, sneaking him, running some sort of option play where he has the option to hand it or keep it himself and run the defense and stress the defense that way. That's been my biggest critique of the offense and the play design by the coordination of the offense is that they don't stress defenses enough with Drake. Like they can leverage all of these abilities that he has, like the Bills have with Josh Allen, and they just don't do that kind of stuff.
So I know you touched on it a little bit here with the kind of oddly disappointing start for the receivers. I don't know that with the investment of a guy, I was a huge fan of Polk. I was actually borderline wondering like, hey, is he the sneaky value versus Rome Odunze? And now we've actually seen maybe Jalen McMillan be the best receiver out of that trio from Washington. I loved Javon Baker. I really, really wanted the Bills to go after Javon Baker. And I know that one's more not being able to get onto the field versus a lack of production while on the field. What do you think? I don't know that anybody expected 2 6th-round picks from last year to be the leading receivers, although I like Pop Douglas a lot. I think he has the potential to be a piece. Nobody's 1 or 2, but like a legit number 3 slot guy who can contribute and play in the NFL. I think Boutte looks like he could be a deep threat kind of guy, probably more of a wide receiver 4 than a top 2 guy, but a contributor, a guy who can play, which is fine if Polk and Baker are coming in as the future 1 and 2. What's missing there in guys that, it's way too early to write them off, but just a much slower start than what, again, there were guys that we liked in our draft list. We were obviously big into receiver. We did a ton of work on the receivers coming out. There were 2 guys that we both liked here. What hasn't clicked yet?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest, when they drafted Javon Baker, I was pumped. We were sitting in the offices and they draft Javon Baker and I jumped out of my seat. I was like, yes, like there we go. A guy with some explosiveness and some speed that can get down the field. Like that's what they desperately need, especially with Drake Maye. But just starting with Javon, since I just brought him up, I think the biggest thing for him has been mentally getting locked in and sort of getting on the NFL program. I think he's struggled a little bit with that, with being a pro and being tied into the playbook and understanding his responsibilities day in and day out and practicing hard every single practice. And like all those types of things have really been what has held him back for this coaching staff. Not always running the right routes, not always being in the right places, that kind of stuff. And that's tough. You don't know if that light is going to turn on for him at any point. I don't think it's that he hasn't flashed ability. Going back to training camp, he certainly had some really flashy reps over the summer during practice. But once he got to the season, it just seemed like they couldn't trust him fully to put him out on the field. With Jalen Polk, I think it's two sides. One, early on in the season against Miami in week 5, he catches what should have been a game-winning touchdown in the back of the end zone, ran a really nice stick nod, nodded on the hook, and then went right up the seam, split the safeties, and had what looked like a game-winning touchdown. And he didn't get the second foot fully in bounds. So it was one of those like heel toe calls that they called against the Patriots. And from that point on, his confidence just has been really kind of shot, right? I feel like he's really battled some like demons, rookie wall type of stuff from a mental standpoint. And then I would say, secondly, now watching his film, he just doesn't seem to be running the routes at the tempo that they need him to run it with. Like when you watch him, there was one target on Sunday against the Cardinals. Like he's not even out of his break yet, and Drake Maye is already having to make a throw, because his route, he's just taking too long, too many fakes. It's not college. You don't have 4 seconds to go ahead and run the route because Penix has all day back there. Like you got to have some urgency to what you're doing. So the hands and the drops and stuff have come, I think, because of confidence or lack thereof after some early struggles early in the season. And now you're starting to see some of the issues that maybe we saw a little bit in college with separation and speed and like all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to call him a bust yet because I agree that it's probably way too early, but I think it has been disappointing that Jalen Polk has been inconsistent. I thought that for sure he would just be steady at least. Same. I didn't think he was going to necessarily be a star in the league, but I thought that they drafted like a number 2 receiver that could be like a Jacoby Myers type that was just going to be steady for him.
That's exactly what we were thinking when doing our draft shows. Bills were looking for a number 2 wide receiver, and it's like, oh, this guy could be a steady, consistent guy. So I agree with that mindset. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball here. And actually, this is the one I'm a little bit the most surprised with the Patriots. I didn't expect a ton on offense with that offensive line, with the struggles of, starting the season with Jacoby Brissett. Knowing in my mind, I thought they would switch over to Maye at some point, that Brissett wasn't going to be the answer and you had to go with Maye. So I expected the offense to have some struggles and growing pains throughout the year. But on the defensive side of the ball, going from Belichick to Mayo, a disciple of Belichick, and with the pieces that actually are on this defensive side of the ball, I thought this would be a better transition. What is going on that side? Is it simply injuries? I know Christian Barmore working his way back from that blood clot. That was huge. He was such a presence for that defense for so long, having him work his way back. But there's pieces at every level of this defense, at least on paper, that I like a lot. Is it the struggles of the offense early impacting the defense? What is your kind of overview of what has gone wrong on the defensive side of the ball this year?
Yeah, look, I said earlier in the show that a lot of Gerard Mayo's off the field stuff, like press conferences and even like in-game stuff like game management and time management, has been the nitpicks for a lot of people. To me, the biggest indictment on Gerard Mayo in year 1 is how the defense has just completely fell off a cliff. Like, this is a guy that played linebacker for the Patriots and then was basically the co-defensive coordinator with Steve Belichick since 2018, I believe it was, or 1919. And they've just completely fallen off on that side of the football. Now, the injury excuse is there, or the availability excuse, I should say, is there. Christian Barmore gets blood clots on the first day of training camp that appears, and he's basically not
crazy that he's even back and playing this season, right?
Yeah, luckily it's not to like digress too much, but David Andrews missed the season in 2019 because of blood clots, and it's a lot of the same medical staff that was here in 2019 with David. So they kind of saw the warning signs really, really early that awesome. Something might be up. And our team doctor, Jim Whalen, sent him to Mass General almost immediately and said, you got to get checked out. Like, I think you have blood clots. And so they were able to catch it really early on, which was nice. But he's a shell of himself, and I don't hold that against him whatsoever. He's just not the same player. He wasn't lifting, he wasn't working out, he wasn't playing for the longest time. He's just not the same dude. He's going to need a whole off season to ramp it back up and to get to where he was last season. So they basically have like 50% of Christian Barmore out there. He's a body at this point, essentially. Jabril Peppers had the off-field legal situation, so he was out of the building for 6 or 7 weeks, I want to say, this season, and now he's come back and he's been rusty. So he doesn't look like the same player that he looked like in training camp or last season either. So two guys that you were expecting to be really big impact players for you at the back end and the front end are essentially shells of themselves at this point. The other ones, Jawan Bentley, big part in the middle of the defense. I know you guys know that with like Milano and players like that. Like, you lose a guy like that, it's your signal caller, really unique skill set. He's been gone since week 2. He tore his pec and has been out for the year. Mm-hmm. So the injury excuse is there. At the same time, I would say that the fundamentals and just the overall structure of the defense is just not there. Like, they're just not playing 11 guys on a string. They don't cover well in terms of communication and being on the same pages of where they're supposed to be. They don't fundamentally play sound up front. They don't take on blocks well. They don't shed blocks well. They don't tackle well. So all of these little things that Belichick was so good at keeping up. Like, he was so good at, it doesn't matter if guys are hurt, doesn't matter.
I was going to say, like, years past, these injuries also would happen, and it would still be a fundamental football team that wouldn't allow the type. Like, what it stands out to me is the way teams are able to rush on the Patriots. Like, that's something that is new to see, those uniforms getting rushed on like that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, they were 3rd in the league last year in yards per carry allowed. They were one of the best run defenses in football. Now, Bentley and Barmore and Peppers were all a huge part. Like, that's like your spine of your defense, right? Like, that's going right up the middle of the defense, and they don't have that right now. But even still, I look at guys and I just, there are 2 gapping systems, so they want to press guys and then throw them to the sides and make those stops in the gaps, and they just don't do that well outside of a few select guys. Devon Godshaw is still a really good nose tackle, but outside of him on the defensive line, they don't stop the run well. Their linebacker play has not been good, so that's been really frustrating for me to watch. It's just the decay of the defense, and it's really disheartening when you watch your defense just in Jacksonville, or I guess I should say in London against the Jaguars. The Jaguars ran it 17 straight times to ice the game in the second half. 17 runs in a row, and the Patriots actually made it a 1-score game briefly, and then the Jags just went on a 18-play touchdown drive where they took 9 minutes off the clock in the fourth quarter, and it was blouses. Like, that is just so uncharacteristic of anything we've seen around here.
Yeah, and that feels so frustrating to watch. I've seen the Bills defense do that in certain games. You guys mentioned Gonzalez earlier as like obviously that's the guy that on the defensive side people are looking for. But real quick, I want to get Christian Ellis has actually popped for me watching on film a little bit. Is he going to be available for this game? I know he had a head injury last week. Will he be available for this one?
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to be good to go. I don't believe he was on the injury report today, but he definitely participated in practice. So that's good. And yeah, look, he's a certain type of player. Like, you're not going to ask him to like take on guards and fullbacks and stuff like that. But he's probably one of their more athletic second level.
He flies around.
Yeah, he can fly around. I mean, he made a tackle on Kyler Murray on a third down last week, one of their few third down stops where he had Murray in the open field and he was able to get him on the ground, which is not easy to do, as we know. So I haven't seen a Patriots linebacker make a play like that in a lot of space in quite some time. So his background's in special teams. He's a special teams ace for them as well. And so you can see that speed, open field tackling ability, those things do exist there. And once they get Bentley back next year, and Tavai is still, I think, a lunch pail guy, as I like to call him, just a solid, do your job type of player. They could have Ellis in a role that is more suitable, third downs, passing down situations, things like that, that might be more suited to what he's good at.
Yeah. How has this back end been holding up? Because I actually like this room a lot, right? Jonathan Jones, Gonzalez, Marcus Jones, Peppers, Duggar. And I know Peppers wasn't with the team for a long time, but when he is playing, he's playing well. Like he pops on tape too. Duggar hasn't necessarily lived up to what I thought. Are they struggling to find where his role is as that kind of like hybrid player, but making him a safety? Like how has his role been defined? But that room as a whole, talk about how they've held it. Because I think that's up there in terms of names on paper, one of the better ones when you look around the league.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the season, how who is it that comes out with that list on ESPN of like the Jeremy Fowler, I think does, the top 10s at each position. Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers were both on the list for safeties. That's supposed to be a strength of this team. And I think, starting with Duggar, he's had a roller coaster of a season. He's dealing with a high ankle sprain that he suffered, and he sat out a few weeks and he came back. Now he's back on the injury report with the high ankle again. So like he's kind of been struggling physically, I think, and that's made an impact on his game mentally as well. And he's had a lot more, coverage busts and breakdowns and things that we are not used to seeing from him. So he's been streaky this year and hasn't really been his full self, and Peppers hasn't been available. So, those are two big pieces. Now, the cornerback room, I actually think has been really solid. And Mike Pellegrino, their cornerbacks coach, I think is one of their better position coaches and always seems to have that room ready to go. I really obviously could gush about Christian Gonzalez for probably 5 minutes. He is a breath of fresh air on this football team, like one of those guys that just clearly looks like a blue chip talent, and they don't have very many of those. So he's just outstanding, and he can go out there and cover number one receivers all day long. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., poor guy that was in jail last week. I mean, that was a tough performance for Marvin Harrison Jr., but it was also just a great performance by Gonzalez. So, he's very, very good. I still think that Jonathan Jones has good football left in him.
Mm-hmm.
It might be more as like a slot safety these days than it is as a true cornerback as he gets a little bit slower later on in his career. And then Marcus Jones is always going to be small. Like he's always going to have that to fight against him, but he's strappy. He covers guys in man really tightly. If you're going up against an opponent that has like a true slot receiver, you feel pretty good about him covering guys like that. So I really like that room too. And I think Alex Austin, the last name you guys might remember from the game last year, had a pick in the game last year. It gives them some size, just some length on the outside because they do have the Joneses are smaller. So, he gives them somebody that can go up and cover a Keon Coleman, or cover somebody with some size on the outside that if Gonzo has to cover, a true number one that isn't that guy.
So the drill, Evan. We'll put you here on the spot. Our friends over at BetUS have it as a 14-point line in this game. They have the over-under at 46.5. What do you expect to see this weekend? What are you going to be watching for? And give us a score prediction.
Yeah, look, that's what I'm watching for right there. It's just at this point, it feels like covering this spread would be a step in the right direction for the Patriots. I look at this matchup and what I look at from the Bills offense, and we just talked a lot about the Patriots defense. I find it hard to believe that the Bills aren't going to score at least 35 points in this game. Like it really doesn't feel to me like the Patriots are going to have a ton of answers for that Bills run game. I just don't really see how they stop Allen and James Cook in this game. It's just tough to imagine that. So I look at that 46.5, point total there, and I have to think that that's Vegas telling me that the Patriots aren't going to score because it's going to be 35 or more from Buffalo. So if the Patriots even get 2 touchdowns out of this game and it's 35-14, then you're over, right? So I feel like that's Vegas telling you this is going to be a blowout. But I would say that, if I was a betting man, which I'm not allowed to be, so I'm not, but I would say that I would take the over here on 46.5, because I do expect, the Patriots offense, even last week, it was garbage time, but they put 2 touchdown drives together in the fourth quarter. So I think that you could see something like that, where the Bills are up, early big, and then the Patriots score a little bit at the end of the game.
So if you like Evan's prediction here and lean into the over, make sure you use our promo code YouTube150. You can get up to $2,000 on your deposit match bonus, 150% on your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits. Again, you can use our friends over at BetUS to be able to bring that aboard. So Evan, tell the folks what do you have coming up next over at Patriots.com?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about Gonzo. I'll have a piece on him later this week about his Pro Bowl, All-Pro case, stuff like that. I definitely think, even though the Patriots are not a winning team, that he's deserving of being in those conversations for sure. And then honestly, a lot of our attention has turned to, unfortunately, off season and draft, and what's next for this regime and who's going to still be here, from this regime, both coaching and personnel side. And I know your producer asked me about Ted McMillan in the chat, and look, we're already grinding on that stuff.
Yeah. Best offensive tackle, or you go with Ted. It's going to be hard.
I will say,
to pick.
It's at least you're not in that spinning your tires middle ground where the Bills were stuck in the drought for so long of in the hunt this time of year, where you're not technically eliminated from the playoffs and you're probably going to be picking 15th or something right in the middle. At least you have the quarterback. It's there, and now it's just what pieces do we pick to put around him in these blue chip areas? Yeah,
100%. I think this year for the Patriots in the draft, they have so many needs on both sides of the ball. Defensively, I think they could probably find their level just by giving everybody back healthy next year, but they still lack a true edge rusher. In the pass rush, Matthew Judon gets traded, and they didn't really replace him there. So Abdul,
I thought Uche would do a little more.
Yeah, I mean, they traded Uche. He just really had a tough time with discipline and setting the edge in this defense, and it didn't stick with him after that 2022 season. He had that breakout year, and I liked Uche. I thought that he was a really skilled pass rusher and could do a lot of different things, and he's going to be a free agent. I still feel like in the right fit, if some team could get it out of him, I feel like he's a diamond in the rough if you just can put him in the right role, and put him opposite a really good pass rusher, like Judon was for the Patriots, and do that sort of thing. But, look at Abdul Carter from Penn State. That's a guy that I think is in the conversation for them as well. Just a true edge rusher. But Ted McMillan's a really talented guy. And I mean, we get more calls about Travis Hunter and Ted McMillan than anybody else.
I bet.
Understandably.
You're coming up for this one, right? You'll be up here?
Yes. Yeah.
Pack warm. It's going to be chilly out, man.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little cold, but I always look forward to coming up, and especially look forward to the wings on Saturday night.
I was going to say, it's one of these years you're going to have to hit me up, and we'll go get some wings before the game.
Yeah. Do you have a spot? What's your favorite spot?
Anywhere.
Oh, we get you a
list. Buffalo. It's Buffalo. We can go anywhere and get good wings.
All right. Deal. Bet.
All right. Appreciate you very much, Evan. Let's keep both teams healthy this weekend. Good, entertaining football. And then we'll hopefully, like you said, have some things going back the right direction, get it to a more competitive, fun environment going forward.
Absolutely, guys.
All right. Happy holidays, man.
You as well.
So obviously, like I said, it's fun for you to be able to now poke some fun at some of your friends
here.
As I
want it to be. They won't pick up the phone.
I don't.
I took it on the chin for 17 years. I picked up those calls. Come on.
They got to be ready. It's their turn.
Jeez.
So I am similar to Evan, and the offensive part is the one where the only path I can see where maybe it isn't a ton of points is because we run the ball so much that maybe the clock is running and there's just not as many possessions as there is in a normal game. But man, this offense is clicking on all cylinders right now. The Patriots aren't stopping much of anybody. I we're giving up a lot right now, so maybe the Patriots have a couple flashes offensively, but it's tough to see this being an overly competitive game. Other than just saying like, hey, it's a division game. Sometimes things get weird. Like that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I think if you were going to play Nervous Mafia, where you play it on this one is one. The Bills are one of the best teams in the NFL, so every team's going to give you their best shot, right?
Yep.
This is going to be a game that people are viewing just because Josh Allen's out there. So it's not a primetime game, but it got flexed, into this 4:00 spot, and it's a game that people are going to be watching because everyone wants to watch Josh Allen. So players get up for that, right? And you're getting some players back, and they still want to put out good tape and stuff like that. And I think it's easy to get your team up when they're a 3-win team with nothing to play for, and you can be like, hey, look how cocky these Bills are, and they're doing slime time and MVPs and everything. They're coasting through this. They're sleeping on you. They don't respect you. I think those are all easy things to get a team up to play its best football, or whatever that best version of it is. And so it's David Goliath, right? Like all you have to do is swing a punch, and the Bills special teams is pretty terrible. Maybe it's comes through a special teams type play and you can get something going in that direction. So there's definitely paths for a team like this. And my biggest concern would be that the Bills are sleeping on the Patriots as much as I am this week and getting ready for this game, right? Like I'm definitely, I tend not to do it. I tend to really stay focused and look at this matchup and do our work consistently. And I'm kind of a real cocky kid right now. Like I did my work for this, but it was like I'm watching, I'm like, all right, this like they're not gonna do nothing to us. Like if we play the games that we know how to play, I agree with what Evan said. Like if the Bills are who I think they are, they should just come in and handle this business, keep this at an arm's length. I could actually see this being one though where because like I don't know that they're going to drop 35-40 because I don't think they're going to have to, right? Those last couple of games, they've had to score that much in order to keep them ahead in those games or keep it at arm's length because
this is easily one where I could see Josh not playing the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like this could just be something where they get up 3 scores and like Evan says, maybe Patriots score late and makes it feel a little bit tighter than it was, but they were up 3 scores the whole time and the defense did a pretty much good job and late in the game.
Yeah,
Drake
they're
Maye
up
does
17
something
and
cool
the late touchdown
or
makes it look like it's only a 10-point victory or something.
Something like that. Yeah. And I think that's where actually, I know there's a lot of talk from the Bills this week of like, well, the Patriots have had 7 1-point game or 1-score games or something like that, but a lot of them have been like a late score that makes it seem like a closer game. And they're scrappy in that way, right? They are going to play all the way through. They're going to do all that stuff. But yeah, I don't see it necessarily being a super competitive game, especially on paper.
So before we do our score prediction, our quick William Mattar here to help segment today, I was just going to bring up, it was nice to see, I think everyone practiced today.
Mm-hmm. Despite some fear-mongering of Josh Allen's injury.
Don't get me wrong. Anytime they tell me Josh Allen is going into the x-ray room for any reason, precautionary or not, I don't like it.
He's so popular, though. He's such a popular player that, like, if it was something, somebody would have uncovered that there was more to it than that. Like, you don't that isn't held super secret, right? For too long, we would have found out something about him, and he was true to it. He got it checked out. It wasn't a big deal. He played after the injury and played phenomenally.
Yeah, this was ridiculously well.
I think the biggest news on that though was Spencer Brown.
Yeah, Spencer Brown wasn't even on. Wasn't even on there. I know that like Rapp and Hamlin and some of those guys were still in Douglas were all limited. So those are ones we want to see progress.
Yeah. Although that's a good one this week. Like, do you need? Not. I hate to say it. I hate to be that kind of guy, but we just saw what and I do think I put out a video. I don't think the defense was necessarily as bad as the box score and all those things felt against the Lions, but this isn't the Lions you're playing. I think you could put out similar guys on defense this week if those guys need a little bit of time. I know Taylor Rapp was close to playing this weekend, but if you need to give some time, is this the week to do it?
So I don't think you dramatically change your decision-making process for injuries for much of anything. I would say if it was magically some percentage health meter, like in a video game where you literally see the percentage of what someone is at, maybe this is a game where you would lean like, hey, normally we need to see 80% plus, and in this game we need to see 85. Like you have to be 85 or 90. That like you would be a little bit more conservative, but I don't, if Taylor Rapp was close last week, and he practices and is ready, he plays. Like, I don't think you don't play them just because, hey, let's just be careful, we could beat them anyways. I think that you stay pretty true to your process, but if there's anything that really is a game time decision kind of thing, or like a coin flip kind of thing, we're like, well, if it was a playoff game, I bet you they would push through it, but we'd really like to do one more week. I do think you lean on the conservative side. You don't push anything. Because one, there's value in getting guys like Cole Bishop and Cam
Reps
Lewis
and
more
stuff,
reps.
But there's also
I think
value in the reps of a Rapp or a Hamlin who
you
just missed
don't
a
want to
game.
hold them out
Yeah.
in like their only game back is the playoffs. Like, you want them to
Right.
get back into that rhythm. So
Yeah.
that's why I think you stay relatively true to it. If they're ready to play, they play. You know, if it's borderline, maybe that's a tiebreaker of why you wait. But I don't think that you dramatically change that process. I don't think that's a good step to go through.
How concerned are we seeing Bicep listed next to Matt Milano on a limited?
I mean, I think anytime you get even the possibility of re-injury, you have to be concerned about that. I know that, I think there's a lot of people. I guess maybe I'll turn this around to you. And I meant to ask Eric this. I want to ask as well. Did I miss something about Dorian Williams' season that like I didn't pick up? Like, I thought he was fine so far this season when Matt Milano was in the. I see so many people talking about that Dorian Williams was so good. Do we need to find a way to get him back on the field? And like, hey, if Matt Milano isn't all the way back to what he used to be, that he deserves to be out there in that spot. And is that sometimes I'm overly critical on players. Did I miss something here that he was better than I realized?
I think this is a case of antsiness in Bills Mafia, right? Like, and recency bias plays into this a little bit, right? We saw this with Von Miller's return, and I do think this was something I was trying to pump the brakes on last year of like, hey, this guy needs time. And I don't know if the Bills are handling it correctly in terms of how much time they're giving him to take time. That's a different discussion. But he's going to take time to get back to the player that we are expecting if he ever gets back to that, right? I'm comparing it to Von Miller last year, right? The Von Miller injury, people are like, he can't be on the field. We got to get this guy completely off the field. He's useless. Let's cut him. We don't want anything to do with him. There's that reaction. And it was an injured player coming back from an injury, a significant injury, working his way back. And what the Bills were doing were allowing him to work his way back, right? They were also watching the film. They were seeing that he wasn't at that level of production. And I think that applies to where Matt Milano was at, right? Matt Milano didn't play for 400 days. He's not picking right up. And this is what I warned people, Greg. Like, I saw everybody posting the videos of the Mike White hit and crazy videos of Matt Milano. And my concern was people are expecting Matt Milano to just like come back, like to your point, they do in video games where the guy gets off injured reserve and he's back to what he was at 95%, right? Like, and that is just not the world. We just talked to Evan, Christian Barmore, obviously a much different health significant thing, but wasn't working out, and he's working his way back into football. And so I think the Bills are content to allow Matt Milano, and that I think they saw the schedule that he had ahead of him and thought, hey, if we can give him these 6 weeks, 7 weeks or so to ramp up to go into the playoffs, that's going to be enough to get him as close as we can to the player that we're expecting him to be heading into the playoffs. But to your answer about who Dorian Williams is, I think all of those things play into people's urgency of, well, Milano isn't back to where we thought he was supposed to be. And so that's a problem. And Dorian Williams at least gives us high-end athleticism and made some splash plays, but he also had more snaps. So we saw more of a body of work this year. And so, there was some splash plays, but he was still getting washed. He was still part of the things that I was defending Damar Hamlin in the run game. Dorian Williams was just as much a part of the problems in some of those explosive runs that we saw as Dorian Williams was, but Damar Hamlin was the one getting all the flack and hate for it because he's a little bit slower and a little less athletic, right? And Dorian Williams on one of those plays where he got pretty beat in the run game, but he's so athletic, he chased down and ended up making the tackle on Jonathan Taylor 30 something yards downfield. People just highlighted that, hey, he made that chase down tackle, but they forgot that he got washed out in that play. And so like, there's a lot of that in the Dorian Williams. I think he's a fine prospect. I like him. He's still limited in coverage. Like, I don't want Dorian Williams on Hunter Henry this week, or something like that. And so, yeah, I think the calls for him are a little too over the top. I think he's a really good linebacker 3. And in what you had with Detroit, where you are able to put 3 linebackers on the field and limited amount of reps, like that's a real benefit to the Bills. Matt Milano still has seen more football. He processes better. He communicates better. He's not going to get as fooled. And I expect him to slowly get better as those reps get under his feet, assuming he can stay healthy here.
Yeah, I saw Dorian Williams as like, oh, nice. We have another Terrell Dodson, a guy that's good against the run. You don't really want out there in coverage, but we can kind of platoon and only use him for what he's good at. And now I see people talking about like, oh, he's, like this, irreplaceable guy that you have to find reps for to be out there. Like, well, no, I don't.
Yeah,
that's not what I
don't even
saw.
know how good he is against the run. Like in certain plays, yeah, like when he reads it right and it gets downhill, like very athletic and stuff, but also still has plenty of those problems that we saw last year where he overreads it and it creates a problem. Like run defense is 1 of 11, truly.
Yeah. So anyways, I think that obviously it's nice that we have both guys back and available. Yeah. Dorian was back for the Detroit game. I do like him as our third linebacker. I think that's a good opportunity that's there. I am not saying that Matt Milano clearly isn't back to where he was before, but I think people presuming that means he can't get back there with this ramp up that we are now, he came back for week 13. This is only his 3rd game back. Yeah. They wanted to give him those 6 weeks, like you said, to be able to get himself ready.
To come back, right? McVay,
like
Ben Johnson,
crazy. Some like 2 of the best offenses
snow
in the
game.
league.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's wait and see where that's at and what it takes us to. And maybe there is some platoon involved in things. I'm open to that, but I do think it's much more likely that we see a slow ramp up to whatever version of Matt Milano he's going to be this season. And maybe that's not going to be the all-pro linebacker that he was, but it could still be a good player. And that Dorian Williams can be a very nice linebacker 3 that helps us in those spots where we need it. I think that's the most likely outcome.
And I think there's a conversation to have going forward if Matt Milano doesn't improve to where we want him. I think Dorian Williams has the potential.
There are some tough questions to come up next year of what we may need to look at with contract and things like that.
And I think Dorian Williams has shown the potential to fill that position into the future. Like I think he has developed. His arc is and Brandon Beane talks about this a lot, and that maybe that is where people are going with this. Is Brandon Beane wants players that are ascending, not descending, and Dorian Williams is ascending. And right now, I think in a vacuum, Matt Milano's a descending talent, right? Like and the injuries make it so that he is a guy that's on his way out, and Williams is on his way in. And I think maybe people are saying pull the trigger now. And roll with the younger guy, but I trust in the coaching staff. Trust plays a big role in this. Like guys that you want to trust in those spots, also plays a big role in that.
Yeah, and we saw with Black Wednesday earlier this offseason, like they're going to make some difficult decisions that are hurtful from a fan standpoint that are the right thing from a future value standpoint. So we'll deal with that in the spring when that comes.
Did you know people still want to get rid of Vaughn?
Oh, God,
I had that in my mentions today.
There's still a lot of time here where I expect there to be further improvement and more contribution of value from Matt Milano. Yeah. We'll see if it's enough. That's what we'll find out.
We'll see if we need enough.
So let's put ourselves back here on the spot.
Sure. I went first last week. It's your turn.
It is. And I do think it's hard not to have this be a pretty easy Bills win. I think that your idea of maybe a late score could be the right one here. I kind of floated around of I think they're going to run the ball a lot. I think it could let the clock run. I don't think it'd be crazy to see something like 27-13 or something like that. I think we could see some of those kind of things. So I won't be shocked if Evan's right and we get all the way up to 35. I'm still predicting the same 5 scores from the Bills as what 35 would be, but I think maybe there's a couple field goals in there. But right now this offense has been a juggernaut. So it's not crazy to think it could be like 35-13, but I'll be conservative here. I think that we run the clock and there's a lot of Mitch Trubisky time at the end and it ends up being like 27-13.
This is silly. Because I have it 27-13. That is exactly where I have
That's
it.
awesome.
Which never, it rarely lines up. I think it's only happened a couple times.
Yeah, we haven't done that
for
much
us,
this
but
season.
I do think this is the first game in a while the Bills score under 30, but I think it's because Josh Allen might not play the entire game, or that just like situationally, I don't think there's going to be a need to be as aggressive on fourth downs. Like they'll just say, like, let's just stick to a game plan and almost run out.
This is one where genuinely, if you punt and pin them deep, you can trust back, hey, they're not going to be able to go 95 yards on us, 90 yards on us. We'll put them back in those positions.
Yeah, and to your point, I think both teams will run the ball a lot. It's going to be cold. I think as much as I said, like, the Pats could get up for this game, like, this is going to be freezing cold. And if you're not in contention and it's freezing cold and it hurts to do everything out in 15-degree weather, like, guys are going to probably make some business decisions in this game and stuff like that. Like, it's the end of the year. They're probably already booking vacations for spots. You know what I mean? Like, it's the reality. The Bills have been there. We've seen the Buffalo Bills be this bad late into a year, and guys making business decisions and guys pretty much putting in, just trying to
stay healthy,
just trying to stay healthy and get through the season. And I think that is a little bit where the Patriots are. I don't think that Drake Maye necessarily has this group totally focused and playing for him. I think as much as the media is suspect of him, I think they are a little bit too, the team. And so it's a weird spot for them to be in, but maybe they score late in this one, but I don't think they score often. This is going to be actually, in my opinion, a really good chance for the defense to get some confidence, right? Like, this is a team that adjusted line yards is 27th, like every statistic on the defensive line, just like Evan was talking on the offensive line, all the statistics are bad. Same, or on the offensive line, it's bad. The defensive line's bad. So your trenches are going to be able to just build up some confidence, and it's against a bad opponent, but I do think that matters, is like building momentum as they go into the playoffs, of getting some sacks for some guys. Like, Von Miller can get some sacks. If guys can get some pressures, Ed Oliver keep building up what he did from last game. I think that matters. You build that going into the playoffs against some of these bad teams. It builds confidence.
Yeah, I think this can be a very good get-right game for the defense, be able to get that kind of spot in there, keep the momentum going on the offense, but maybe get some other things in play with, more in the run game, really spreading it out. I could see Ray Davis and James Cook and Ty Johnson all having, solid, maybe 30 or 40 plus yards each. And maybe this turns into like a 200-yard rushing game total between those three and Allen. So we'll see where that one goes. I think that there's certainly some possibilities there. Any final thoughts for the people before we sign off?
No, I got all kinds of thoughts. So follow me on anywhere that you are on the internet.
Tell people you did a really cool new video clip that you put together for kind of testing some things out.
Yeah, I don't know if it was cool or not, but you can come and tell me if it wasn't, if people didn't think it's cool. So I'm doing a new one. People know I like to a little bit fight narrative. So I'm trying to do a little bit of perception versus reality when I see a narrative. And one this weekend, and you and I even went back and forth a little bit on it. And I kind of dug into did the Bills defense let up in the second half of that game? And I don't think it was. I think there was some context in place. And so I explained that. And it's a bit of a shorter form video, but just trying to make more content for you guys. And I did get great feedback on the YouTube comments. So I appreciate any of you that came and watched it. I appreciate that. And we're going to try to do some more of that stuff for you.
Yeah, you did a really nice job with it. It was one, like you said, you found examples where some of the things with the simulated pressures and some of the different aggressive looks they were doing, there was a couple of them that, like, Sam Laporta just carried a dude for like 6 yards and, like, hey, they did the right thing, or they almost got home and or Jared Goff spun out for a stupid
that 66-yard touchdown's like a millimeter away from being a blowout.
Yeah,
like, we're totally different game.
Terrell Bernard literally touched the football.
Correct.
Like, he touched the football. It just didn't touch it enough. You
game of inches, man.
All right, guys. We appreciate it. So many great things here. Obviously, great having Evan on again. This will be a fun one to be able to see. The Bills, they did, even with it being a 14-point spread, the NFL bumped it to 425 to get more eyeballs on Josh Allen in this offense. It's crazy. Everybody wants to see Josh Allen play. So I don't blame him. I want to see Josh Allen play.
I want to see it.
Merry Christmas to everyone. This is a wonderful holiday part of the year, so enjoy whatever you like to celebrate. We hope you have a very happy holiday. My family will enjoy a very, very Merry Christmas. I'm looking forward to going back to Western New York and spending time down in the Southern Tier with my family, and I'm excited for you to have a Merry Christmas with yours.
Yeah, hopefully lots of Merry Christmas and dubs the rest of the way here going into the new year.
But on behalf of everybody here at Cover One, we appreciate you guys. Our wonderful sponsors, William Mattar Law Offices, our friends over at BetUS, encourage you to make sure to remember to please gamble responsibly. But on behalf of awesome producer Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and we are out.